and then we can talk about the assignment. Would you like to present it tomorrow, or but because there's already actually a third group assignment I've put up for you.
Madam, I propose we can have a lecture today. Then maybe we present tomorrow's presentations tonight.
Okay, that is no problem. So let us have our lecture now. Let me just share my screen. So today, so I think you can all see my screen.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's my screen. Today what we wanted to look at was the systems approach, because this is really key. We touched on it slightly in the first lecture and also the first session. This one I wanted us to go a bit in depth because at the end we want to look at one of the practical things we do, especially when it comes to the systems approach, which is modeling. A big part of ICT management. So already we had already seen some of these slides. I'd introduced the topic to you previously with the first assignment. So let us see if we can get a much bigger grasp, because this one is an important part, really an important part of ICT management. The rest is more theory as far as ICT management is concerned. So we have already looked at actually these particular slides that we just want to go deeper. We are looking at an organization as a system, as we see in this diagram that we have here. The system is called, the entire organization is considered as a system. And when we think of a system has components. Within each component, you have processes, and each process, and these processes can feed into other units, like any system, okay? Like any system. So you can think about your organization, the way it works. If I was to, let's say, think of a university where I belong, you have the different departments which you can consider as different units or components. You have the registry department, you have the accounts department, you have the accommodation, catering, and so on and so forth. You have the ICT department. All these components feed into each other. Think of your generic organization, which has marketing and sales, accounts, and production, and so on and so forth. Think of all of these as components. Now, each component has its own unique business processes, okay? It has its own unique business processes which have activities, okay? So these have activities within them. And within each component, this particular unit may feed into the second particular unit, and so on and so forth, if we think about it that way. So you have inputs, and then you have the final output, which is the product or service. So again, just to reiterate, we are thinking of the components as the different departments as the components: sales, production, research and development, finance, human resource. So this is a generic structure for any organization that we can think of. Now, you can think in terms of where you are right now, or you can even think in terms of the Mid-South Chambers case study that you got at the beginning. And think of the different components and how each was described to feed into the other. So simply put, look at the example here. You have a marketing department which creates a customer. So once you create a customer, this customer obviously needs to place an order. If I get into any organization, I'm placing an order. Think again in terms generically. In a university setting, the customer would be the student, and the person is applying for a particular program, and the application may be accepted or rejected, just like any order. And this order is entered, and then it is invoiced. The same thing as what would happen to a student in a university. Student is invoiced. Now, automatically, the fact that the person is invoiced, the person is automatically transferred to finance. So you already see the marketing department as a unit is feeding, as a component is feeding into another unit, another component of the whole system. So the finance department needs to accept payment, needs to manage the account of that person, of that customer, and then you have the general ledgers for all other accounting activities and so on and so forth. Then you have the human resource department, which basically handles the human resource within, those who are going to carry out the duties and business processes in each component. So they will do things like select and recruit, the payroll, they will manage the employee data evaluation, and so on and so forth. So here we are looking at the organization as a system, okay? We're already looking at in the most generic sense of the word. Now, all these activities are producing data. They are producing data, or they are processing or storing or producing data. So in this, as they're carrying out their duties, they are processing data. Okay? So processing data, imagine that the individual in the accounts department, the individual in the accounts department is entering data of a new customer, is placing the order, and then automatically the person is invoiced. Let's come to the accounts department, who is receiving the data, who is receiving payment, receiving of payments, then managing that account. So all of that, these are isolated processes. Okay, these are isolated processes that these components are working with. Now, all of these tasks can be automated. Okay, all the tasks that we've described can be, or most of the time, are automated. So already we are seeing ICT coming in. Okay, so now these automated tasks can either work in the isolated units, or they can feed from one component to the other. Now, other times we find when these processes are feeding into one into another, you have what we call integrated information systems, because you find the processes are feeding from one business unit into another business unit. So you have basically an entire value chain. Okay. So now, if we look again, if you go to the Mid-South Chambers case, I think that was an example of an integrated system that was implemented, but badly implemented. I think we can all agree to that. So now we have these systems, when as much as we're using them, we have they are seen to be beneficial. However, if they are badly managed, it's very difficult to see those benefits. So what are those benefits? We all know them. These are nothing new. We have operational benefits, okay? So in this time, you find that because somebody is using an automated system, it can quicken, it can save time, it can also lower communication costs, okay? Then we have tactical systems. These help us deliver or realize goals, for example, marketing campaigns and so on and so forth. So those are tactical systems. Now we are seeing things like, for example, artificial intelligence, which is coming in to support marketing managers. So that is a typical tactical, and also we could also strategic benefit. Okay, so these are the basic benefits. However, there are also benefits which are non-monetary. These are non-quantifiable, but still they must be brought out. If you can't express them in monetary terms, you can express them in other terms. For example, if a system brings better customer service care or gives a high-tech image, then this must be brought out clearly. When you're seen to be tech savvy, some people tend to trust you more than when you're manual, that kind of thing. Now, let's understand in all of this, in the systems approach, why it is so significant for ICT management. Okay, why is it so important? Here we have a summary diagram. Okay, a summary diagram which looks at components of ICT management. One, we have the concerns. And here we're going to discuss just briefly in a later slides what concerns means. So the concerns would be of the stakeholders, things that that concern management, things that concern employees. You have their concerns. So in each department, we normally see the CIO must take an understanding of what are the concerns of each business unit. What are their concerns? What is the concern of management? What is the concerns of board even? What are their concerns? So those must be understood. Now the concerns automatically lead to strategy, because in strategy, this is where we spell out how ICT is responding to those concerns. Okay. Now, this strategy is then used. If you look at this in a diagram, it looks very much like the business processes that we have actually talked about. This ICT strategy then addresses our information system domain. Now, within the information system domain, we would have understood our business processes, what each unit within the organization, what business processes are of concern and need support, need ICT support. Once you've identified these, then you also identify the data that these business processes handle, either the ones that the data it collects, processes, stores, distributes. Yeah, what is that data? Now, in relation to that and the business processes, this is where you also determine the applications that would be necessary to support the business processes and data that is going to be managed. Then on top of that, this is where we then begin to identify the infrastructure that will support these information systems. Okay. On the other dimension, as you've selected your applications and infrastructure, you also need to have managed or to manage the life cycle. For how long shall we use this application? Okay. For how long shall we receive training for staff members? When shall we implement the new system? What kind of data do we need? What kind of applications do we need? What would be their life cycle? What kind of infrastructure will this application sit on? What would be its life cycle? Okay, so these would be the components of ICT management. Now, again, you can translate this into the Mid-South Chambers case and look at all the mistakes that were made to bring about that particular failure. So let us go through these components, okay? The information system domains. We start with the business processes. What happens in the organization, in each unit? What happens within? What are the activities that are carried out under each business process? What are the rules and constraints? What are the results? What are the expected results of each activity and business process? So take an example. What would be the business process we have already outlined, for example, for the marketing department? Okay, what activities do they carry out in order to get a new client? Where does ICT come in? First of all, to get the client, then once they get the client or customer, what happens to that customer? What information is necessary to retain this customer? Is it their phone number? Is it their business contact, their line of business, and so on and so forth? Would there be other products and services that we can sell to this customer? Can we pick some certain information? Can the marketing department pick more than just the name and number? Maybe other interests the person may have that you entice them to get more than just the one particular service or product that they are selecting. So then what are the rules and constraints? So those would be the first things that we look at. Then we come to business data. So the business data is essentially emerging from the business processes and the activities. What is happening? Okay. So here we're looking at content and structure of the data. What are the relationships between data? I think by the time we're talking about these, you're already now seeing things like UML coming in and so on and so forth. Data, those kinds of things that we talk about. What are the rules? Who accesses this data? Who shouldn't have access? These are the constraints. Okay. Business data, that means the business processes. What are the business processes that are carried out? So this is the business data. Then we have the application data, which means what applications are going to support the data and business processes that we have identified. Okay. What are the applications that will support the business processes and data that we are talking about? Again, think of the Unitrack system that was implemented by Mid-South Chambers. Where do you see the gap? Or do you see, was this an appropriate pick? That's the information system that was implemented. Infrastructure, again, infrastructure refers to that backbone that will support our business processes, applications, and data. Okay. So this is the detailed information systems diagram. So from the business processes, we use business data. So there's particular business data that we select from the business processes. So for example, if you went to the registry department in UMU, there are several business processes that are carried out. And I think there we can identify what kind of business data is selected. What is selected, what is asked for, what may not be asked for. So take an example. An important business data is the qualifications that the applicant has. Do you have, if it's a bachelor's, do you have an A-level certificate, and how many minimum principal passes do you have? What program are you applying for? Does it relate to the principal passes you have with the subjects done? Things like that. So that would be the business data that would be selected as they are carrying out the process of admitting students into a program. Now, based on this business data, that unit then determines what application would be necessary, would be able to support this data. So here, this is where ICT then begins to appropriately select the applications necessary. Then after that, you begin to identify and set up the infrastructure necessary to store, manipulate, and so on and so forth. Basically, support the data and applications so far. Do we have any questions so far before we go further?
Thanks so far, fine.
So far, we are okay?
Yes, we're okay.
Okay. Now we have the systems. Now remember on the dimension we had in the previous slide, we had the other dimension which looked at the information system life cycle. So the life cycle definitely starts with requirements. Okay, starts with requirements. So here we're looking for the role of the system in the business. What system do we need? What are the specifications required? What is the general vision? You can look at the global requirements and then the nitty-gritties that come in. Now, from these requirements comes the design. So all of this is talking about the life cycle, the design of the system. Okay? So within the design, you have the subsequent models that are created. Here, we're also going to talk about modeling. It's extremely important in ICT management, where we talk about where we should be able to visualize the system. Even though we are actually going to purchase the system, we must visualize the different components of the system and if they will meet the requirements that have been identified by the different stakeholders or the particular business units. Then we come to the development stage. Now, here again, these terms may seem like, oh, is this system in-house built? No. Even a system that is being bought off shelf, there's a development stage where you determine the actual system that you're buying off shelf, if it can fit into the design that you as an organization require. Okay? And here, this is where you even task those who are selling the system if they can customize this according to the design or the requirements that you have. Now, as we do this, we can see that there are many things that we miss out as ICT when new systems are being implemented. Many times back deals are made by maybe those in sales and those in finance, and it seems like a good deal. And ICT is kind of pushed out of the picture. Okay? ICT is pushed out of the picture. Then when a system is implemented, the system actually doesn't respond to the requirements. The requirements that could have been better articulated to ICT, and ICT then translates them into designs and models, which are then presented to a vendor. Now, like the example of Unitrack in the Mid-South Chambers case, where a model should have been developed to give a picture to the vendor that this is what is required. Okay? Then once whichever system is done, it is assembled and tested to see if it responds to the requirements that have been defined. Then once this has been determined, then we start talking about rolling out. Okay? And this, again, must also be strategic. If you looked at ICT strategy and so on and so forth, you look at things like change management, it's a whole project in itself. So here, we look about installing, configuring, conversion from old to new, and then training. This is the rollout process. Now, once the rollout process is done, we come to operations. This is where we begin to use the system, and the system we begin to actually use the system, and support is being provided and maintenance. Now, again, go back to the Mid-South Chambers case and look at all this if the life cycle, information system life cycle, was considered. Once something is operational, like anything that is operational, let me give you an example of, for instance, a car. The minute you buy a car, I remember someone was telling me that the minute you buy a car, the minute you drive it out of the bond, it begins to lose value, which means you have to immediately start thinking about decommissioning. Okay? It's not of course what we want to see about systems, because we expect to use, because they are heavy investments, but we must understand that there's an end of life for this system. Okay, so there must also be a time when the system must be replaced or removed for a new system in itself. But the first things first is that we must see that it is operational, that it helps us achieve our objectives. Once we evaluate and it stops achieving or fails to achieve, then that system must be decommissioned. Okay? So these are the things I would like you to think about for your third assignment. I think this should be, the third assignment should be your last assignment before we do our take home. But this should be, so you have to think about this for your third assignment, and especially on the issues of training. How was this system rolled out? The modeling part, because there's also you're going to model, but then you also have to give a critique. Where did the previous implementer go wrong? Where it almost looked like the system was being decommissioned even before it was ever used. Okay, so here we come now to the part, the ICT strategy. Where does strategy come in management? Strategy comes in, first of all, in alignment, business IT alignment. Look at what happened with Mid-South Chambers. Was there alignment between the business, between IT and business? Ask that question, okay? Setup and maintenance of IT decision structures. Look at the challenges that Leicester had with the system, where he reached a point where he found out the ICT guy was actually even interviewing for other jobs. Then exert control. Was ICT in control in the Mid-South Chambers case? And this is where ICT management comes in. We want control, we want ICT to come into control of the systems that are being implemented. Many times they are introduced outside of ICT, and then control is completely lost. So we are basically discussing our diagram from inward outwards. So the business concerns were global, if you remember our diagram. Yeah, the business concerns were global. Let's go through these one by one. Let's start with business concerns. Each unit within the organization has concerns, and this is where ICT, as part of management, must be on ground to identify what these concerns are. For example, for marketing department, they may want to know, they may have concerns about their products and services. Maybe they're not reaching markets effectively. How can they better use ICT? What are the challenges out there? Okay, so ICT comes in to say, how can we better support our marketing department? And here sometimes also a marketing department can actually spell out clearly things they can do, and then ICT can identify those applications that are necessary. Okay, you have the economic aspect. Where can we reduce costs? Where do we have recurring operational costs that we can reduce on? Basically, this is where the business wants to know, where can we cut costs? Where are the benefits of ICT? Okay, so you're looking at the economic aspect where costs can be cut. Take an example. If we can reduce on, let's say, other media advertising like television, newspapers, and we can go social media, that is a very good way of that's a very good economic aspect that one can think of. The other is compliance. ICT can do a lot in supporting an organization to be compliant. Okay. For example, keeping your books well, ensuring that you're paying your taxes on time, your tax returns are being made on time, and so on and so forth. ICT comes in there quite a bit. Protection of data, because these business processes are collecting data from different people, from customers, from employees. And ICT must come in terms of management, yeah, management on how can we keep this data safe. Okay, so the marketing department may not know that I cannot show certain data to somebody else, but ICT would know, would have to have that in the back of their mind, or rather ICT management should have as part of that in back of their mind, where they implement it not just in the systems, but also in policy. The systems concerns. So here, in terms of ICT management, we'll be thinking about service levels. What is the minimum quality that we expect from a system that is being demanded for being implemented? Okay. What is measurable about it? That to say this is the minimum functionality that we expect. Usability. Okay. The ability for that system to be used by the employees of that organization. Then you look at others: maintainability, scalability, so on and so forth. Security. So it is the three areas that are of concern to systems: at service level, the minimum service level that can be provided as far as this any new system that is being implemented, whether you are getting this from a third party or rather outsourced, or it is a system that is going to be managed in-house. What is the minimum service level that should be expected? Usability. Okay, how user-friendly is this system? Again, go back to Unitrack and look at that particular case. Look at the challenges that organization went through because of minimal training, maintainability and administration. Okay, the staff that you have, all the resources that you have to maintain a system. Then we come to the issues of security. This is where the ICT responds in terms of what data do we have, who has access to it, what are the restrictions, and so on and so forth. Do we have any questions so far?
Seems done, madam.
Nothing at this time.
Okay. I hope I'm making sense, but let's move on. So in management, as ICT management.
Yeah, you're making sense, madam.
Okay, I hope so. So in management, in ICT management, the issue is to identify stakeholders' concerns and manage them. Okay? Identify them and manage them. So here we have a graph. Now, at the graph level, we have the horizontal side. At the horizontal side, we are measuring interest of a stakeholder. On the vertical side, we are measuring the power of the stakeholder. These two, level of interest and power. The lower the interest and lower the power, the lower the less influence or interest the person will have to a system. The higher the interest level and the higher the power, then it is extremely important to keep this person, these stakeholders, satisfied. These are the key players that must be satisfied, and they must be kept informed. So the lower the interest, the minimal effort that one puts in. But the higher the interest and power, the more important these people must be kept informed.